A few months ago, I kicked off a video series in which I cover my journey of earning every platinum trophy in the Call of Duty franchise. That video focused on the PS3 generation of Call of Duty games, so in this one we'll be going through the next 4 games: Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, Modern Warfare Remastered, and World War II. Before we start, I want to clarify one thing though. Some games, like Ghosts and Advanced Warfare, released for both the PS3 and the PS4, but since I don't see the point in completing an identical trophy list twice, I will only be doing one stack per game. Black Ops 3 also falls into that category, but since the PS3 list differs quite significantly from the PS4 one, I had planned to complete that game for this video too. Sadly, at this point the PS3 Platinum for Black Ops 3 is unobtainable, due to a glitch with unlock tokens, so I'm only covering the PS4 version. If this ever gets resolved, I'll probably make a bonus video for the PS3 game. With that out of the way, we can move on to the new games. The last part ended with Advanced Warfare, a game that left many people worried about the future of the Call of Duty franchise. It ushered in an age of hyper-futuristic settings and chaotic exosuit gameplay, which a lot of people simply weren't interested in. Regardless of whether the upcoming games are good or bad though, one thing is for certain: these trophy lists are difficult. Far more difficult than the average list on old gen. They all have extremely low completion rates, with some of the most notorious platinum trophies in the trophy hunting landscape. This video will cover my quest of earning these trophies. From this point forward, there will be major spoilers for every Call of Duty game up until Call of Duty World War II. Black Ops 3 released in 2015 and was developed by Treyarch. It followed in the footsteps of Advanced Warfare in featuring exosuit gameplay, which, as I've mentioned a few times now, received a lot of negative feedback. In contrast to Advanced Warfare however, the movement in Black Ops 3 was actually fairly polished, which made this game surprisingly fun to play. In Advanced Warfare, the exosuit movement had always felt kind of sluggish and awkward, but in Black Ops 3 there was a real momentum to how you moved around the map, in part due to the added wall run ability. This, along with other improvements like specialist characters and a fantastic set of maps, made this game an immense success, both in terms of sales and popularity. Now, in the previous part of this series, I would often complain about a lack of multiplayer trophies, but with this game, they're finally back. The trophies here are fairly simple. You just need to reach level 55 and get a few medals based on the new specialist abilities. Reaching level 55 is, admittedly, a bit time consuming and will take most players about 15 to 20 hours to achieve, but if you find any enjoyment in Call of Duty multiplayer, it's not that bad. Also, as opposed to Black Ops 2, there are no unobtainable trophies, and Call of Duty games never truly die out, so the list can still be completed from scratch. Last time, I was also a bit disappointed with the single player section of some trophy lists, since I felt they lacked any true challenge, making completing them a bit boring and underwhelming. Black Ops 3 also made changes on this front, but in this case I got far more than what I bargained for. Black Ops 3 has the most difficult single player section of any Call of Duty trophy list, and it's not even close. All of this is due to a single trophy. Before we cover that though, let's take a brief look at the actual campaign, since it's easily the most wild and unique story we've ever seen in a Call of Duty game. Black Ops 3 is a continuation of the Black Ops timeline, although it's set in the far future, meaning that none of the old Black Ops characters appear in this game. In this story, you play as an unnamed soldier, simply referred to as Player. It starts off like Advanced Warfare did, because in the first mission you get mortally wounded, but are saved by your superior, in this case John Taylor. After this, you undergo surgery and are equipped with highly advanced cybernetics to retain your combat abilities. Central among these cybernetics is the DNI, a direct neural interface that allows soldiers to communicate with each other on a subconscious level, and gives them access to a wide range of combat enhancements. A few years after the events of the first 2 missions, the player is recruited by the CIA and is sent off to Singapore, along with his squad mates Hendricks and Kane. In Singapore, there is a CIA outpost with which all communications have been lost completely, so your team heads there to investigate. Upon reaching the CIA outpost, nothing is really adding up, as it seems that somebody broke out rather than in.
What the hell tore through here? Something left in a hurry. Kane.
Could be 54i grunt detonations.
Yeah, maybe if the doors were blown in. But they're blown out.
They then reach a control room and find the team maimed and killed, as well as all data being wiped. The last operation recorded here was carried out under the command of none other than John Taylor, your former superior. Since Taylor is a well-respected CIA operative with absolutely no motive to kill his own colleagues, the team initially suspects a local militia group. This theory is rejected pretty quickly though, and they find out that Taylor's team has gone rogue. To investigate this further, the player and Hendricks head to the site of Taylor's last known operation, a destroyed and abandoned facility. This mission is actually quite eerie, as the robots here all seem to be mysteriously corrupted and show extremely odd behavior. At the heart of the facility, they find a member of Taylor's squad, but he seems to be out of his mind completely and is obsessed with something called the Frozen Forest. In the missions after, Taylor ends up contacting you and Hendricks, but he too is unable to be reasoned with in any way. The team then finally manages to capture a member of Taylor's squad, after which you interface with their DNI to find out exactly what happened to Taylor and his team. This is the start of the most ludicrous mission in any Call of Duty game. Her mind is fiercely defending the information it's hiding, so to retrieve that information you have to battle through all the defenses it has set up, consisting of World War II infantry, a tank, wolves, and even zombies, all while passing through some of the most amazingly absurd set pieces I've ever come across. After all of that, you find out why Taylor's team has gone insane, which is that their DNI has been corrupted by an AI virus called Corvus that has taken control of their minds. Both you and Hendricks have interfaced with infected DNIs as well now, so you're slowly becoming corrupted as well. At this point, it's a race against the clock to take out the remaining members of Taylor's squad before becoming completely corrupted yourself. You succeed in doing so in the 10th mission, and therefore have stopped the further spread of the virus for the time being. In the final mission, you head to a facility where the creator of the virus is located. The place has become a giant battleground, but you manage to break through and capture the creator. Hendricks, now completely corrupted by the virus, executes him. As you two are now the only host of the virus, you take out Hendricks before turning the gun on yourself. Instead of dying though, you find yourself in the Frozen Forest, a sort of afterlife created by Corvus. In this afterlife, you fight through the memories of your previous missions to try and eradicate the virus inside of it, all while Corvus is trying to subdue you.
Let them envelop you, comfort you.
Don't give up. Don't let it beat you.
Imagine somewhere calm. Imagine somewhere safe. Imagine yourself in a frozen forest.
With the help of an apparition of Taylor, you succeed in killing Corvus. Somehow you survived the whole ordeal though, and stumble your way outside. Here, the game ends on a massive twist that gives the entire story a completely different meaning. For now, I'm going to gloss over this ending twist, because 1, it would take too long to explain, 2, there isn't a broad consensus on what exactly the ending means for the story, and 3, I want to leave you a little curious about the campaign if you haven't played it yourself. I'll leave a link to the ending and a post of a proposed explanation in the description if you'd like to see it now. This campaign is pretty insane, and many people were, understandably, put off by the confusing narrative. At this point though, I had played through so many similar and predictable first-person shooter campaigns that Black Ops 3 was a breath of fresh air for me. It does such an excellent job of building up an intriguing mystery, and combined with the unique set pieces and interesting plot points, makes this a truly memorable single player to me. The Black Ops 3 single player isn't just memorable for its story though, because if you're a trophy hunter, it will be memorable for all kinds of other reasons. There is one trophy that is, in my eyes, the single most absurd trophy in any Call of Duty, at least when looking at the sheer volume of challenges it has you complete. That trophy is called Personal Decorator, and to obtain it, you need to earn all 12 decorations. The requirements, in a simplified form, are as follows. Earn all weapon attachments and camos. Fully upgrade your Cybercore. Unlock all weapons, equipment, and Cybercore abilities. Complete the game on Veteran. Complete the game on Realistic. Complete every mission on Veteran without dying. Find all the collectibles. Complete all 176 mission accolades. Complete all campaign challenges. Get a score of 35,000 in the combat simulator. Get 2,000 kills. And then the final decoration is unlocked by earning all the other ones. Of these 12 decorations, 5 end up being real obstacles, and I'm going to discuss them in the order in which I personally tackled them. First up is beating the campaign on realistic. As I said in the previous part, I was really disappointed with the fact that Call of Duty campaigns on the highest difficulty were getting easier and easier. Well, no more. Black Ops 3 added a new difficulty called Realistic, one rank higher than Veteran, where one shot will almost always kill you instantly. In addition, the game is far more conservative with giving out checkpoints, further increasing the difficulty of Realistic. At this point I should mention that in Black Ops 3, it's possible to play campaign missions with up to 4 players, which can make Realistic a little more bearable, since you can revive each other. I did my initial Realistic playthrough solo though. Acclimating to the one-hit kills definitely took some time for me, because there's just no margin of error. On Veteran, you can get hit 2 to 3 times and still be okay, but here that's not the case, and as a result you have to change up your entire playing style. One thing that did really help were their cybercore abilities, that you can use to turn yourself invisible, hijack robots, or stun enemies, among many other things. These abilities proved to be invaluable during my playthrough. The first 2 missions were fairly doable for me, as you can just abuse cover and play it slow for the most part. In the third mission I was already struggling though, mainly due to the introduction of warlords, which are basically Treyarch's version of juggernauts. Add on top of this a section where you have to enter a building full of enemies without any checkpoints, and you have the first truly challenging mission. After this, the difficulty stays about the same, up until mission 7, Rise and Fall, which is one of the hardest sections in the game. In this open area, you have to plant a bunch of explosives in the ground to destroy part of the street. During this, all sorts of enemies spawn infinitely, so it's no use to sit back and take them out first. It reminded me a lot of Heart of the Reich and World at War, where you just have to take risks and plant explosives to reach the next checkpoint. At least in this case, I had the invisibility enhancement, which helped a lot. After completing Rise and Fall, it was far from over, with the ASP fight in the church and the boss fight against Taylor's gunship causing me serious issues. In the final mission of the game, the difficulty crescendos. To enter Coalescence headquarters, you need to make your way through the courtyard that is filled to the brim with every type of robot the game has to offer, some of which respawn infinitely of course. This is the only section in a Call of Duty game where I felt truly helpless. I simply could not make my way past the barrage of enemies the game bombards you with. Even invisibility wasn't proving to be very helpful, as I would always just get shot anyways. I must have been stuck here for well over an hour, but in the end, I was able to get inside the building. What's crazy however, is that this is only the very start of a mission, and you still have about 1 to 2 hours of mission left. After completing the rest of the mission as well, I finally completed the game on Realistic, thereby also earning me a trophy that's fittingly called No One Will Believe You. I thought the addition of this new difficulty was fantastic, and to me it was much harder than any veteran playthrough on older Call of Duties. Certainly something I was hoping to see in future games. Up next was Immortal Fame, the decoration for completing every mission on Veteran without dying. Veteran is easier than Realistic of course, but in some ways this decoration can be more annoying, as a death at the end of a mission means you have to replay the entire thing. To avoid this as much as I could, I did all of these with a friend, because if you play co-op, you can revive each other. I found out later that it's also possible to play solo and dashboard whenever you die, but where's the fun in that? The first 2 missions were honestly really easy for us. I think we made it through all of them in one try, and pretty fast too. In the 5th mission however, all of this changed, when a section at the very end was killing us over and over again. You have to swim past these depth charges, but they come at you fast and in large numbers. It wasn't until the 4th or 5th try that we successfully made it through, and in the end, this mission took us more than an hour to complete. The next section causing us a few resets was the fight with Moretti in Sandcastle, which you don't reach, you guessed it, until the very end of the mission. Lastly, as expected, the final mission was also quite tough. We got through the courtyard pretty quickly, and were looking to complete the mission, but not before those stupid depth charges made a return, to send us back to the beginning again. The next try we finally beat it, and got the decoration. Besides some of the late mission deaths, this was actually one of the more enjoyable decorations for me. Veteran no death ones would definitely be too difficult in older Call of Duties, but with the implementation of co-op in this game, it was ultimately very doable. Next on my list were the accolades. All of the 11 missions have around 15 so-called accolades that are basically mission-related challenges, like killing enemies in a specific way or getting a certain amount of mission score. These accolades have a similar problem to the veteran no-death runs, because there's no checkpoint select, so if you fill an accolade and then trigger a checkpoint, you have to replay the entire thing. This problem manifested itself for me in a pretty egregious way during the 4th mission. For the accolade trick shooting, you need to kill 6 drones in 2 seconds, and the best way to do this is to shoot at this group of drones at the end of the mission. I did exactly that numerous times, yet filled the accolade over and over again, only getting it on my 5th attempt. The next mission was similarly brutal. There's an accolade called No Survivors, for which you need to take out all the immortal soldiers in the flood section near the end of the mission. What you need to do for this exactly, nobody really knows, because taking out all the soldiers usually doesn't unlock the accolade, yet taking an unintended shortcut and killing a few specific soldiers sometimes does. For me, this one took 3 attempts. These were the 2 worst accolades for me, but there's a few challenging ones in every mission, and I don't think I ever got all accolades in one playthrough of a mission, so it took a while for me to get all 176. Onto the campaign challenges, which is something entirely separate from the accolades. Most of these challenges you complete by earning the other decorations, like completing missions on Hardened without dying and finding collectibles, and the other challenges aren't too interesting, like getting a certain amount of kills with different abilities and cyber cores. They're all time consuming, but not really difficult. All except one. Ready for Anything requires you to complete all 16 waves of the combat simulator on realistic difficulty, and it is this challenge that is widely regarded to be the most difficult part of the platinum. Like I said, the combat simulator consists of 16 waves, and what makes a realistic playthrough so arduous is that you don't get a single checkpoint. Completing the simulator takes 20 to 30 minutes, so if you get hit once or twice at any point, you're thrown back to the beginning. I should note that there is an invincibility glitch that you can use to bypass this challenge entirely, but I thought that would be a lame way to complete the challenge, so I just aimed to do it normally. The first 13 waves are honestly not that bad, and after about an hour or so, I could pass them pretty quickly on every attempt. After this point though, the waves get significantly more difficult, as you have to deal with the large ASP machines, which have homing mortar missiles that can kill you instantly if you stand still anywhere on the map. In addition, you always have to take out an assortment of other enemies as well. A lot of guides recommend hijacking a drone and using that to take out as much enemies as you can, but for me, the drone always got destroyed instantly. I had more luck with using invisibility, where I would run circles in the back of the map and that would pop up to kill enemies whenever it had recharged. With this strategy, I eventually got the hang of waves 14 and 15 as well. At this point, I just needed to figure out the last wave. This one is especially brutal, as you have to deal with almost every enemy type. Normal robots, drones, warlords, paws, and an ASP. I kept trying to kill all the weaker enemies first, but I would always get sniped by that stupid ASP in the process. All I needed was one lucky run though, and after some attempts, I was given a huge gift. The pathfinding of the warlords isn't too great, so at a certain point they got lost on the other side of the map, leaving me with a great opportunity to take out the ASP. After that, I nervously made my way to the warlords to scrape off their health bit by bit. Luckily, I kept it together at the end and was able to successfully complete this challenge, thereby ending a nearly 2-day long grind. That leaves just one decoration, Master of Arms. For many people, this is the worst part of the platinum. You need to unlock every camo for every weapon. You do this by getting 650 kills with every primary weapon and 150 or 300 with the secondary weapons, totaling to over 17,000 kills. You won't even be close to this number by the time you finished everything else, so you have a huge grind ahead of you. The close range weapons can be grinded at the spike launcher section in Rise and Fall, where the enemies spawn infinitely. For long range weapons, there is a much faster spot though. In Demon Within, at the point where all the wolves spawn, there is a spawn point that doesn't work properly, so you can sit still and pick them off for as long as you want, speeding up the grind significantly. There is a problem though. This is boring. So mind-numbingly boring that I went slightly insane during all of this. At this point though, I was so close to the end of this trophy that I just sat down and grinded everything out, spending hours and hours killing the same few wolves over and over again. After almost 15 hours, I finally started to see a bit of light. I had earned every camo for every weapon, and thereby earned the decoration, so I only had to complete the 1 or 2 campaign challenges I couldn't be bothered to do earlier. When I eventually did that as well, I unlocked a trophy that is more difficult and time consuming than most platinum trophies. As personal decorator is now out of the way, it's just zombies left. Since Black Ops 2 released with what is in my eyes one of the worst zombie maps ever, I was somewhat worried that a similar fate awaited Black Ops 3. This game released with one map called Shadows of Evil, and as soon as I loaded it up, all of these worries went away instantly. The look and atmosphere of this map is out of this world. It's seriously one of the coolest locations I've ever encountered in media. This map takes place in Morgue City, which is basically a giant city of vice. 4 new characters are introduced, all of which lead sinful lives in order to make ends meet. A mysterious shadow man denounces their actions and has put them up to a set of trials, all while the city is plagued by a zombie outbreak. In terms of gameplay, some new mechanics have been added too, mainly the gobblegum machines, which are abilities similar to perks that can be unlocked and chosen outside of games. Lastly, the Apothecon Servant, this map's wonder weapon, remains one of my favorite wonder weapons in zombies. Compared to the campaign, the zombie trophies are light work. The most time-consuming trophy you unlock by opening Pack-a-Punch, which, although far more complicated than in previous games, isn't difficult by any measure. The rarest trophy is unlocked by killing 10 zombies inside a store, and I honestly have no idea why so few people have unlocked this. Like previous zombie maps, there is an Easter egg quest in this map as well, but there's no trophy tied to this in the base game, and it's only required if you want to 100% the game as well, so I'm leaving that for the DLC video. In the end, I got the trophies for this map done in no time at all, and that meant that I was almost done. I only needed to get the remaining miscellaneous trophies in the campaign, which, yes, is something you have to complete on top of Personal Decorator. Black Ops 3 is, in my eyes, a total success, both in terms of quality of the game and quality of the trophy list. The campaign especially was extremely memorable, although I will say that the requirements for Personal Decorator were a little too excessive. I like the realistic mode and the veteran no-death runs a lot, but all the decorations on top of that, like the accolades and the camo grind, generally didn't make for an interesting challenge, and made this trophy too time-consuming. I've played through some of these missions close to 10 times at this point, and I've become completely burnt out on them, despite really enjoying my first playthrough. Like I said before though, I take this over an easy, boring trophy list any day of the week. The final trophy I had to earn was Gun Game, for which you need to get 5 kills with 5 different weapons in 30 seconds. No challenge at all with an armory nearby. With this, I was finally able to earn the platinum, 7 years after starting the game and with close to 200 total hours clocked. The Call of Duty that released in 2016 was Infinite Warfare, and is the most hated Call of Duty of all time. The trailer that came out before its release quickly became the second most disliked video on YouTube, and when the game did release, it was received poorly. I think the main reason for this is that this game is futuristic to the point of being comical. Call of Duty had gone from simulating real wars and historic battles to flying robots in space. This was also the third consecutive Call of Duty game featuring exosuit movement, and at this point most people wanted to return to the more traditional boots on the ground gameplay. Was this game really that bad though, or were people just overreacting? Before I dive into that question, I should mention that, alongside Infinite Warfare, a remastered version of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was released, available to people who bought the deluxe edition. I'm covering that too, of course, but first we're doing Infinite Warfare. Infinite Warfare released with a campaign, multiplayer, and, despite being made by Infinity Ward, a zombie mode. I'll start with the campaign, though I'm not gonna bother covering the whole story in detail, because it's just not that interesting. It's set in outer space, where there is a war between two factions, and the leader of the rivaling faction is threatening to invade the Earth. He kills a bunch of your teammates, so then you launch an assault on the enemy space station, kill the villain, and save the Earth. The end. In addition to the story, there are two sets of side missions as well. In one type of side mission, you have to board different ships from space, and then the other missions have you control a so-called jackal to take out enemy targets. These missions made for a nice change of pace the first few times, but after that they just became boring and repetitive. Overall, I wasn't a fan of this campaign. For trophy hunters, campaign is by far the easiest hurdle to cross on their way to the platinum. It's reminiscent of some of the easier campaigns on PS3, as you only have to complete a veteran playthrough, find some collectibles, and then earn the remaining miscellaneous trophies. Veteran is a joke in this game, as there are only 7 mandatory missions, so you can just make a beeline to the end and complete the game in a few hours. What was especially disappointing to me about this is the fact that this game actually has 2 extra difficulties on top of Veteran that could have been included in the trophy list. The first of these 2 is called Specialist, and is one of the most unique campaign editions I've seen in a Call of Duty game. It essentially turns the game into a survival shooter, as, among other things, health regeneration is turned off, meaning that you need to find healing items to stay alive. Not just that, getting damaged will actually impair your control over the character. Got shot in the leg? You move slower. Got shot in the arm? You can't aim down sight anymore. Got shot in the chest? Your accuracy is decreased. This adds such an interesting dimension to these missions, but since there wasn't a trophy tied to this feat, I never really had any incentive to finish it. Completing Specialist unlocks the highest difficulty ever put in a Call of Duty, unfortunately called YOLO mode. This is just Specialist difficulty, with the added twist that any death will send you back to the beginning of the campaign. In this case, I'm actually quite happy that there's no trophy tied to this mode, because I hate permadeath trophies, especially when a playthrough takes several hours. I was only able to find a handful of people online who were crazy enough to complete this. The last trophy I wanted to mention was one that I thought was kind of witty. The main villain in this game is played by Kit Harington, who of course also plays Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. Killing him before letting him finish his speech will earn you the trophy "You Know Nothing," referencing the famous scene in Game of Thrones. With that done, let's move on to the multiplayer. From my perspective, Infinite Warfare has one of the least popular multiplayer modes in a Call of Duty. There's nothing acutely wrong with it, by any means, but I, and the people I played with, were so completely over the jetpack movement that we were done with it within a week of its release. Even if you do like this movement, there's no reason you wouldn't just play Black Ops 3 instead, because that game has better maps. I couldn't quit the multiplayer quite yet though, because there is a single trophy to be earned, one that would sadly keep me stuck on this game for way too long. Let me introduce you to one of the most infamous trophies in all of Call of Duty. Dominion. Win 5 online matches in multiplayer. Wait, what? Yeah, so this trophy is completely glitched, and pretty much has a mind of its own. On release, many posts on the forums popped up, with people reporting that they won well over 5 matches, with no trophy ever popping. It wasn't unobtainable per se, as most people did unlock it eventually, but nobody ever found a consistent way to get it to pop. Some claimed that only matches in certain game modes counted, or that you have to be the top scoring player in the lobby as well, but none of these theories were ever proven. For me, it unlocked after winning close to 100 matches, with this trophy taking me about a month of playing on and off. The worst thing is that I actually got kind of lucky here, because in the years following its release, this trophy basically stopped unlocking altogether. It was later found out that, for whatever reason, the only way to get your wins to count for the trophy is by playing on Asian servers. This means that you have to find someone from that region to invite you to their games to unlock this. Keep in mind that even with this method, it still doesn't unlock consistently. At least it can be earned still, which is better than nothing. Lastly, we have zombies. The new zombie map, called Zombies in Spaceland, was Infinity Ward's first stab at the acclaimed game mode. Now, whenever a studio not called Treyarch releases a zombie game mode, it is always met with some degree of disapproval from the community. Ultimately, Zombies is Treyarch's creation, and so far they have proven themselves to be far more capable of creating enjoyable zombie maps. When Zombies in Spaceland actually released, however, the community's opinion turned around completely on this topic. So yeah, this map is genuinely amazing. Don't get me wrong, it borrows a lot from Treyarch's mode, like the perks, the elemental weapons, and the general structure of the mode, but it adds plenty of new and interesting features as well. What struck me most about this map though was how incredibly dense it was. Despite being fairly large in size, basically anywhere you go and look, there is something to collect or do. It even has a giant arcade with tons of different arcade games to play, where you can earn tickets that you use to buy useful items and equipment. On top of that, the map has a brilliantly executed 80s theme, with basically every famous trope from that era being present. Zombies in Spaceland was a success, and even today is seen as one of the better zombie maps. As is usually the case, Zombies was the biggest hurdle for me on my way to the platinum, with 4 trophies causing me serious problems. The first difficult trophy I tackled was Insert Coin, for which you need to play every arcade game at least once in a single match. This includes all these old retro games, and the games only accessible after going down as well. This trophy is more annoying than it is difficult, because it just takes ages. I did it solo as well, so I had to learn the one zombie away constantly, costing me even more time. Up next was Sticker Collector, which has you complete the entire sticker pack in one game. To do this, you need to build all 4 wonder weapons, the Seticom, find Neil's parts and complete his challenges, and acquire all the elemental cores. What makes this so annoying is that for a lot of these parts and upgrades, you need to power up these UFOs by killing zombies near them. This means that you can't just leave one zombie alive and build everything at your leisure. Instead, progressing the rounds is unavoidable. Towards the end of the game, getting the remaining stickers becomes much more challenging, as the rounds get very hectic. My first few runs didn't go very smoothly, as I was stuck on this one step, where you have to play hot potato with a grenade to bring it to the teleporter in the center. Once I made it past that step, I was lucky enough to complete the trophy as well, though it took me several hours. That brings me to one of the most feared trophies this game has to offer, Soul Key, unlocked by completing the Easter egg. This also happens to be one of the most notorious Easter eggs in this series. Now, looking at the steps, it doesn't seem bad at all, as there are essentially only 3 or 4 steps. You need to build the Seticom and defend it a few times, then play Simon Says with the giant UFO that spawns, and then have to survive a boss fight by beating this alien. Afterwards, the giant UFO can be destroyed, and it will drop the Soul Key, granting you the trophy. None of this seems too bad, but there is one gimmick that single-handedly ups the difficulty by an order of magnitude. The amount of aliens that spawn during the boss fight is tied to the amount of players that are in the game. Normally, the easiest way to complete Easter eggs is by playing with 4 players, but in this case that will spawn 4 bosses at the end, which is nearly impossible to survive. The boss fight is a lot easier when playing solo, but then the previous steps become significantly more difficult. So you're stuck in a dilemma. More people means better chances of completing the first steps, but will make the boss fight a nightmare. Doing it solo, of course, means the inverse, where the boss fight is doable, but all the prior steps become far more difficult. In the end, I chose to try my Easter egg run solo, so that the hardest steps are done first. I was fairly familiar with the map at this point, so getting set up didn't take long at all, but in my first attempts I would always die during the Seticom step. The Seticom is a small radio that you build and then place and defend 3 separate times across the map. The first defense is 60 seconds, the second 90, and then the last defense takes 2 whole minutes. In my opinion, when running solo, the last defense of this Seticom is the hardest part of the Easter egg. 2 minutes is a long time, and the special abilities that I saved up would always run out long before the timer ended. What's even worse is that the location of these defenses is random, with some spots being nearly impossible to hold due to how open they are. After a few tries, I finally got a decent spot, and since I stocked up on basically every piece of equipment possible, I succeeded in completing the defense. Next up was the Simon Says section. From this point forward, the entire map is blocked off and you can only move around the spawn area, meaning that if you go down, it's basically over, because you can't rebuy Jug. The Simon Says part is fairly simple. The UFO will emit 3 colors that you then have to enter. What's tricky is that you're chased around by infinitely spawning zombies, and if you take too long or mess up the order, a brute will spawn as well. After mimicking the correct order 3 times, the boss spawns. This guy is beefy and has an insane damage output to boot. To beat him, you need to train zombies around spawn and shoot him only when you're at a safe distance. It's never truly safe in this fight, however, as he can just teleport anywhere. He needs to be downed and weakened twice before you can actually deal the fatal blow. As difficult as this entire section is, I'm glad to say that, after getting the successful Steadicam defense, I was able to beat him on my first try, though I did have some extremely close calls throughout the fight. Beating him unlocks the ability to pack a punch your weapons for the second time, and after this you can shoot down the portal and spawn to take down the UFO. I picked up the soul key, and with that the Easter egg was completed. At this point, I only needed to unlock one more trophy, which is earned by finding both secret songs in a single game. One of these is pretty easy. There's a handful of picture boards scattered across the map, and shooting the 3 pictures with teddy bears in them unlocks a secret song. The second song, however, is beyond annoying to unlock. Basically, you need to find 5 teddy bears that spawn in random, extremely obscure spots around the map. You might think that you can look up a guide for all of these spots and then check every single one, but there is no definitive guide or video with every known spot. There's an estimated amount of 100 spawn points for these teddy bears, but the guides collectively only cover about 70. This means that whether you can find all 5 teddy bears is completely dependent on RNG. I must have tried to get this at least 20 different times, only finding 3 or 4 bears each attempt. I tried solo, co-op, and even went around the map randomly shooting everything whenever I was stuck on 4, with no luck. I have no idea what changed, but on one run I found 3 of them immediately in the spawn area, and then the remaining 2 not much later, having only checked about half of the total spots. After this, I quickly got all the bears for the other song as well, granting me my platinum trophy and allowing me to finally leave this game behind. In 2016, something incredible happened. Call of Duty 4, one of the most beloved Call of Duty games of all time, was remastered and re-released. This was the first and last time a modern Call of Duty game saw a remaster of both its campaign and multiplayer. From the gameplay we'd seen of this, the graphics have been improved significantly, but honestly, that wasn't even the main appeal for older players. Call of Duty 4 was 9 years old at this point, and, at least on PS3, didn't have much of a player base left outside of TDM. Because of this, the thought that we were going to get full headquarters and ground war lobbies again on all these amazing maps was a sensational prospect. The game then actually released, and opinions were very mixed. Some people took issue with the altered aesthetics or the fact that the game initially launched without a few of the original maps, but personally that didn't bother me very much. What was a giant issue, however, was that a modern spawn system was implemented into this game, where whenever a spawn is even slightly pushed, it switches to a different side of the map. You might think that this is a positive change, as it does combat spawn trapping, but the problem is that the maps were made with the old spawn system in mind, and are far too large for a system where spawn points switch constantly. As a result, the larger maps in this game became very slow paced and hard to enjoy, a clear step down from the original game. Not coincidentally, the 2 most popular large maps in the remaster, Countdown and Bog, are the ones that roughly retained their original spawn control system. This all being said, a slightly inferior version of COD 4 is still a pretty good game, and I lasted far longer on this game than I did on Infinite Warfare. I actually enjoyed the game quite a lot overall, despite being disappointed with some of the changes I mentioned earlier.
Our UAV is online.
In the context of this video, getting a remastered version of a Call of Duty multiplayer wasn't the only thing that made this game significant. Because if you've seen the previous video, you know that the original Call of Duty 4 didn't release with a trophy list. The remaster did, meaning that we could finally earn a platinum trophy for this entry. The list is similar to the achievement list on Xbox for the original game, adding a handful of trophies, and covers single player exclusively. The improved lighting and graphics made it a treat to play through this game again. I remember playing one of the first missions, Crew Expendable, and being blown away by how realistic it all looked. The same goes for All Gillied Up and One Shot One Kill, the 2-mission flashback sequence in which Price and his former captain go on a covert snipe hunt to take out the game's villain, Zakhaev. Macmillan basically appearing out of thin air when he pops out of cover at the very start is something that never really gets old to me. In many ways, I think this mission was the inspiration for the sniping mission in World at War a year later. Instead of Stalingrad, you have to traverse the desolate outskirts of Pripyat, the abandoned city near Chernobyl. What makes these missions so memorable is the unmatched atmosphere, in large part due to Macmillan's timeless quotes.
Look at this place. 50,000 people used to live in the city. Now it's a ghost town. Never seen anything like it. Move.
At the very end of the hunt, you can earn a trophy unique to the remaster, Time Paradox, by killing Makarov before shooting Zakhaev. A neat little touch. In the end, you fail to assassinate Zakhaev, and it isn't until the end of the game, 15 years into the future, that you finally manage to take him out, thereby ending the conflict for the moment. To earn the platinum for this game, a veteran playthrough is required. While by no means the most difficult veteran campaign in Call of Duty, it was certainly challenging at times. The large-scale battles in Heat and the 5-minute long defense section in One Shot One Kill both had me struggling for some time. Other than that, I didn't have much trouble reaching the end of the single player. That didn't quite mean my veteran playthrough was over though, as beating the campaign unlocks one bonus mission, Mile High Club. The trophy of the same name has you beat this mission on veteran, which is infinitely more difficult than any other mission in this game. Basically, this mission is a sprint. You drop down in an airplane cabin and have only 1 minute to make your way upstairs and rescue the VIP. This time limit is extremely tight, making it impossible to hang back and pick the enemies off before making your way through. Instead, you have to sprint through the mission, throwing stuns and killing enemies where possible, and then it will barely be enough to reach the end in time. To successfully pull this off, however, is a different story. When first attempting this mission, you will get killed within a split second over and over again, and even reaching the upstairs area will seem nearly impossible. Despite it being only a minute in length, it took me close to an hour to finally reach the VIP. At this point, the mission still has one cruel trick up its sleeve, as to save the VIP, you need to perform a precise headshot on a barely protruding, moving target. The pressure you're under at this point is immense, of course. Beating this gauntlet requires both fast decision making and nerves of steel. After countless attempts, I finally had my successful run. All that was left now were the miscellaneous trophies. The first of these is probably my favorite. For Best of the Best, you need to beat Infinity Ward's best time on the training course in the first mission. The time to beat is 15.1 seconds, which isn't nearly as lenient as Pit Boss from Modern Warfare 2. This one took me a few tries to beat, but I really enjoyed running the course to see how fast I could beat it, so it wasn't that bad. What was a really annoying trophy though was Weapon Master, for which you need to get a kill with every gun and explosive. There's no real way to track which ones you're still missing, so you just have to replay some missions and get kills with guns you might still need. Apparently, I was missing the M60 the entire time, which is only dropped by an enemy at the very end of the last mission. After this, I got the remaining few trophies and only had Master Ninja left, which has you play through a mission knifing only. By earning this last trophy, I finished off this short and sweet trophy list.
Cars inbound.
In the history of Call of Duty, there have been two periods where the setting and main themes were overused to the point of people losing interest in the franchise. The first period was from 2003 till 2006, when basically every Call of Duty was set in World War II. The second period started with Advanced Warfare, at which point every Call of Duty took place in a futuristic setting and was focused around exosuit movement. In 2017, this futuristic setting had been past the point of sale for some time, and changes needed to be made. That year's upcoming Call of Duty would be developed by Sledgehammer, and funnily enough, their solution to this problem was a return to World War II, of course with boots on the ground gameplay. What was once the poison was now the cure. We had gone full circle. This of course begs the question, was returning to a boots on the ground World War II game a good decision, or would it turn out to be a huge flop? When it released on November 3rd, 2017, we got a very clear answer to that question. In this case, I'll start with discussing the multiplayer, because in almost every way, World War II turned out to be the classic and traditional Call of Duty multiplayer experience. Simple movement, simple maps, simple spawns, and I absolutely loved it. Not counting the COD 4 remaster, it was the first time in years I ranked up all the way to Master Prestige, enjoying my playtime every step of the way through. To me, the strongest element of the multiplayer is the set of maps it released with. London Docks, Flag Tower, Ardennes Forest, Gibraltar and Aachen are all among the best flowing maps in any Call of Duty, and there's not a single map that is outright bad. Attached to the multiplayer was also a decent set of trophies, most of which you earn by completing some daily challenges and then making it to first prestige. For only one of the trophies you have to go out of your way to earn it, and it's anchored to one of my favorite aspects of the game, a game mode called War. This game mode has existed in Call of Duty games for years, but in a more simple form. In Call of Duty World War II, War featured 3 separate maps, where you and your team would either have to defend or launch an attack against the position. Every map has several phases, in which the attacking team has to push the defending team by capturing a bunker, building a bridge, or destroying flag guns. This mode is complete and utter chaos in the best way possible. If you play the 9v9 version, you can rack up insane kill streaks, as the enemies often seem to bunch up in an effort to complete objectives. For the one trophy related to this mode, you need to win 5 rounds of war, and while this can feel a little out of your hands with how chaotic the mode can sometimes be, it wasn't a chore at all with how enjoyable every match was. As a whole, this was my favorite Call of Duty multiplayer since Modern Warfare 3. That brings us to the campaign. Going into it, I had very mixed feelings. On the one hand, it had been nearly a decade since the previous World War II COD, so there were guaranteed to be significant graphical improvements, enhancing the overall experience. On the other hand, I had played through a number of World War II stories in Call of Duty games already, and I was worried that this campaign would just hit all of the same notes. After playing a few missions, however, all of those worries went away, and I was completely hooked. What this Call of Duty does better than any of its predecessors is that it doesn't just focus on the battles of World War II. In large part, it is also about the squad of soldiers you're assigned to, along with all its interesting and unique members. Now, don't get me wrong, the protagonist has the personality of a water bottle, but the rest are all great. 2 characters shine especially bright in this story: Lieutenant Turner, the first in command, and Sergeant Pearson, the second in command. Turner is basically the father figure of the group. He's mature, sympathetic, and responsible. He cares deeply about the well-being of his soldiers and is there for the group no matter what.
None of us could have prepared for that. But you came through when it counted.
Thanks, sir.
You'll be alright, son.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Pearson is everything Turner is not. Arrogant, physically imposing, and intense.
You see wings on me, Private? No, Sergeant. That's because I'm not your fairy fucking godmother! God damn it! I just lost 2 good men in there! Now we gotta pull it together and take out those guns! Come on!
The dynamic between these 2 characters is great. Pearson is only second in command, so he's always begrudgingly following along with whatever Turner decides to do, even though he clearly thinks he knows better. Most importantly of all though, Turner is the only person keeping Pearson in check. Without Turner, being in this squad would be hell. Over the course of the campaign, we play through a number of famous battles from World War II, like D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge, all of them being far more realistic and immersive than in previous iterations. A part of the campaign I quite liked was the mission where you liberate Paris, that starts off with a well put together undercover section. It's a bit over the top in terms of how video gamey it is, but it's still made for a memorable sequence. After this mission, the squad makes its way into Germany, where they quickly find themselves caught up in what is now known as the Battle of Hürtgen Forest. Here, they're tasked with taking over a specific hill, but while doing so, Turner gets shot and killed. This, of course, has a very disturbing consequence, which is that Pearson is now the leader of the group. This is the point where the story goes from good to great in my opinion, because over the course of the remaining missions, Pearson becomes more of a villain than the Nazis. He turns to alcohol to deal with the stress of leadership, gives horrendous orders, and threatens to kill you when you disobey those orders.
You disobeyed a direct order.
Then I guess you better court-martial me.
Desertion is a capital offense. So maybe I should just do us all a favor and finish the job.
Sergeant!
It's over. You got no place in my platoon. Get him out of my face.
We also get some insight into what made him so hostile, as a year prior an entire platoon got wiped out under his command, something he's still struggling to cope with. What ends up resolving most of the conflict is that, in the aftermath of the penultimate mission, you get honorably discharged, while one of your friends is captured and sent to a labor camp. Despite the fact that you have a ticket to go home, you stick with your group and push through into enemy territory. At the very end, you find and save the captured teammate from a labor camp, and the scenes here even manage to leave Pearson speechless. You and the team then return home, and the campaign is finished. Compared to the other Call of Duty games set in World War II, this campaign is either my favorite or second favorite, and not just because of the next-gen graphics and audio. Pearson is, in my opinion, the most underrated character in any Call of Duty game. He is unlikable in basically every way, but the drama and tension he creates makes the entire story so much more intriguing. I'm definitely not done replaying this campaign. It wasn't just the story of the single player that surprised me, but in the context of trophies, what was also interesting was that the campaign did not have a system of health regeneration. Instead, health packs made a return. This gave me some traumatic flashbacks to Call of Duty 1, because that game had a health pack system too, but on Veteran, there were no health packs, making for an extremely challenging Veteran playthrough. For the Platinum in Call of Duty World War II, you also need to complete a Veteran playthrough, but to my disappointment, you get health packs in abundance, to the point that there may as well have just been health regeneration. The highest difficulty should be genuinely difficult to get through, and all the developers had to do to achieve that goal was to remove health packs on Veteran. I've said it before in this series, but I'll just reiterate that, within reason, higher difficulty is always better, as it makes for a more rewarding and memorable experience. Besides the underwhelming Veteran, the single player wasn't completely without difficult trophies though. Each mission has one miscellaneous trophy for you to earn, and a few of these took me a ton of restarts. In the first mission, for example, you have to breach the seawall on D-Day without getting hit by a turret. Even on Recruit, I could not find a consistent way to cross the open areas without getting hit. This was just a matter of trying over and over until I got it at some point. Another fairly notorious trophy is Defender, for which you need to shoot down all the planes over the Rhine at the end of the final mission. With how fast these planes fly by, it's hard to do the entire section flawlessly in one go, so instead you have to reload a checkpoint quickly if you missed one. Be careful though, because if you miss a plane and then reach a checkpoint, you have to replay the entire mission again to get to that point, making this trophy really annoying. This isn't my most hated trophy in the game, however. That goes to Gasoline Cowboy. To earn this, you need to complete the tank section in collateral damage with over 80% health on your tank remaining. The first few encounters aren't so bad, but near the end you need to take down a few tanks, and here I almost pulled my hair out. Whenever you get a hit off, these tanks disappear immediately, so you have to go and find them again. What makes this so frustrating is that you turn so slowly in this tank, so anytime you run into an enemy tank, while looking in the other direction, you're guaranteed to get hit, and thus have to reload your checkpoint. There didn't seem to be a lot of skill involved here to me, it was basically just RNG. When I finally beat all the tanks, I didn't do anything special, I just had a lucky run. I wasn't going to complain though, because with this done, we can move on to the last pillar of the game, zombies. In contrast to previous iterations, this game features a small prologue where new players can familiarize themselves with the basic mechanics of zombies. Most of the mechanics are identical to those of other modes, but one significant change has been made, which also happens to be my biggest gripe with the mode. The Juggernaut perk no longer exists, and instead is replaced with an armor system. The problem with this system is that armor gets more expensive with every purchase, and as a result, you'll often get in situations where you simply don't have the points to get armor, inevitably leading to you getting downed over and over again. As you can imagine, this doesn't exactly make for fun gameplay. Completing the prologue is pretty simple. You just need to survive for a handful of rounds until you have the points to buy the exit door, which opens up the path to the actual map. Trophy hunters won't be done with the prologue this quickly though, as there is a single trophy related to it that happens to be one of the hardest trophies in the game. For Pressure Cooker, you need to survive inside this little building until wave 20. To achieve this, you do get a handful of utilities, such as Quick Revive, armor, and the mystery box, but this house is so insanely cramped that it's very hard to avoid getting surrounded. Not just that, the challenge has to be completed solo, and there are no power-ups like max ammo or insta-kill. This was probably my favorite trophy to go for in the base game. After round 15, the game gets incredibly hectic, and you'll get close calls with death constantly, but once you get the training route down, reaching round 20 is both doable and enjoyable. Now we can finally head over to the actual map, the Final Reich. The Final Reich is set in the German town of Mittelberg towards the end of World War II. From the very first moment I spun into this map, I was completely blown away by the amazing design and atmosphere of this town. From the eerily quiet town square and hauntingly beautiful buildings and streets, to the disturbing bunker laboratory and vile town sewers. On an aesthetical level, this map is perfection. In terms of gameplay, Sledgehammer implemented something very unique. In the Final Reich, you're guided through the map by objectives that ultimately turn into a big quest line. Of course, Easter eggs aren't anything new, but never before have players been directed through these Easter eggs in such an effective and straightforward way. Because of this, the questline was now accessible to casual players as well. You will still need to consult a YouTube guide for a few steps probably, but most of it isn't too difficult to figure out on your own. On the way to complete the questline, you're given a number of objectives, such as building a Tesla gun, defending a power station, and figuring out codes. My favorite part remains constructing the Tesla gun in the bunker. The entire facility goes dark, and right before retrieving the wonder weapon, a giant flamethrower zombie engulfs the entire room with flames and starts to chase you. Once all the steps are completed, the final part of the quest begins, the boss fight against a Panzer murder.
Klaus, what have they done to you?
The design of this thing is unreal. Barring only some enemies in From Software games, I'm not sure if I've ever come across a much more vile and disgusting creature in a video game. To take this guy down, you and your team need to shoot down the battery from the Zeppelin flying above, which can then be powered up with zombie souls. The boss then needs to be stunned by damage, at which point the battery can be attached to him and detonated. Do this 3 times and the Panzer murder will be defeated. The questline is completed at this point, earning you and your team a trophy called Fireworks. This isn't the end of the story. Aside from this casual questline, there is a so-called hardcore Easter egg as well. In this harder questline, it's not enough to defeat the Panzer murder, but you also need to save the guy who is stuck to it. The trophy awarded for this, Dark Reunion, is the reason I abandoned the goal of completing this game's trophy list for nearly 6 years. This Easter egg is extremely long. The reason it's so time consuming is that, in addition to all the steps related to the hardcore Easter egg, you also have to complete the casual questline in its entirety as well. In this case, I only returned to attempt the trophy when I had far more experience with zombies and Easter eggs, and when I found a group of people who still needed the trophy as well. Now, most of the hardcore exclusive steps aren't too bad. First, you need to shoot these keepsakes off of buildings and then find the combinations for them so you can retrieve a record. Then you need to spin this weather vane, find and shoot the light the size of a pixel, and then power the nearby water wheel with an upgraded Tesla gun. Don't ask me why. After this, 2 safes can be opened that both reveal a half of a coin, which can be used to unlock this secret sword. This leads to one of the harder steps, where you have to place the record in this gramophone and then power it up by killing zombies with the sword. When you reach this step, it's highly likely that the sword isn't a one-hit kill anymore, so you need to be very well prepared in order to not lose the entire run. If successful, the gramophone will play a code that can be put into the voice of God machine down in the mines. That brings us to the final step before the boss fight, which is a step that spans the entire playthrough and single-handedly doubles the runtime. This step requires you to build all 4 Tesla variants, which is a monster of a task. To get these variants, you need to find a specific battery, place it in a trap, then kill specific types of zombies with a trap, and finally defend the battery from zombies while it gets molded into a coil. While building all of these, you will see the rounds fly by, as some upgrade steps can only be done once per round. Some of the batteries are also just a pain to power up, as for example, the Reaper battery requires you to kill 2 groups of bomber zombies with a trap in the sewers, and the Hurricane battery requires you to kill 2 groups of Wuslings in the electric trap, leading to some dangerous situations. After that entire process, the 4 Tesla guns can be used to shoot the chandelier in the mines, which will then drop a special gem. With that, the hardcore boss fight can be started. Luckily, this fight is very similar to the casual boss fight, and of course, this time you have the upgraded Tesla guns at your disposal. Once we defeated the boss, the ending cutscene played, and Klaus was saved. It took 3.5 hours to get here, but we finally earned the trophy. After Dark Reunion, no trophy should really pose any threat. For me though, there was one last trophy that for some reason kept eluding me. On rare occasions, the town's villainous doctor can be found lurking around the edges of the map. For a trophy of a similar name, you need to find and shoot him. Despite putting a decent amount of time in this map, I've never seen this guy appear once. You might be wondering how I ever unlocked the trophy if that's the case, and honestly, I'm not really sure. It unlocks kind of randomly for me, so I'm guessing that either someone in my game shot him, or that I shot him accidentally through a wall. I'll take it in any case. Now that I completed zombies as well, I only needed to pick up one last trophy I left unearned in the campaign. Call of Duty World War II is one of my favorite games ever made. The campaign is captivating and immersive, the multiplayer is timeless and addicting, and the zombie mode is challenging and memorable. Everything about this game was just a resounding success to me. On top of this, the game has an amazing trophy list to boot, as it forces you to familiarize yourself and become competent at every part of the game, without any of it feeling like a tedious grind. So far, this has easily been my favorite trophy hunting experience in the Call of Duty franchise. With that, it's time to bring that journey to an end, and after completing this sniping section without missing, I finally earned the platinum.
Dustman took out the second one! Woohoo! You hit that last one! Turn and left-hand targeting out! Everyone out, now! To the ladder! Go, go, go!
While I do believe that, in some sense, the golden age of Call of Duty ended with the release of Call of Duty Ghosts in 2013, this gives the impression that the iterations that came after were all substandard, which couldn't be further from the truth. Black Ops 3 and World War II are outright amazing games, and even Infinite Warfare has redeeming qualities. The Platinum trophies were certainly more difficult to earn this time around, but I liked these games so much that I had an absolute blast going for them. Believe it or not, the difficulty hasn't reached its peak yet, as in the next part of this series we will cover the hardest Platinum out of them all, Black Ops 4, among many other Call of Duties. I also want to note that we're far from done with the games covered in this video, as besides the COD 4 remaster, all of them have seen a breadth of DLC releases with new sets of trophies that I will eventually go through as well. Before I start working on the next part of this series though, I'm gonna make something more light, to change up the pace a bit. I think the next video will be a small Q&A, so I'm probably gonna make a channel post about that soon. That's all I have for now, and I hope to see you in whatever I upload next.
We are about to achieve victory, comrades! Airstrike standing
sound of my voice. Let your mind relax. Imagine yourself in a frozen forest.